The views expressed by the speakers of CamaPlan podcasts are those of the speakers only and may not reflect those of Cama, its members, or employees. Cama does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by these speakers. Professional advisors should be consulted before implementing any options presented. Cama absolutely does not endorse or recommend any individual or organization, including the speakers. Cama, its members, and employees do not accept liability for losses and/or damages arising from errors or omissions within, reliance upon, or any use of the information provided by the speakers. Individuals are strongly encouraged by Cama to conduct their own due diligence before making any investment choices. Cama does not act as, nor offer the services of, an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. If tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other similar expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Hello, everyone, and welcome back again to The Road to Financial Freedom, a podcast that allows experts to share their stories and secrets to unlocking their financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator in Ambler, Pennsylvania, that is focused on educating investors with different ways to grow their retirement savings faster through alternative investments. And you all guessed it, once again, we are continuing to record this podcast remotely. I'm Jess Jones, CamaPlan team member and your podcast host. Our guest this week is founder and ace of transformation behind her company, The Conscious Edge. She believes that focusing on who to become is just as crucial as how to do it, especially when it comes to successful investing. Working both in person and virtually with individuals and small groups, she has trained over 7,000 adults with strategies and tools for transformation. In her 15 plus years of experience, she has helped mission-driven entrepreneurs reach their goals and unlock unlimited wealth and happiness. Through accessing their natural gifts, identifying areas of improvement, and creating strategic plans to align money with their purpose, her clients have become visionary leaders in this industry. So please welcome Alecia St. Germain to our podcast. Alecia, thank you so much for coming today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And, I mentioned this all the way back in the beginning of our correspondence that I had seen you first speak at the Women Real Estate Investor Summit. That was also virtual and feels 500 years, like it was 500 years ago. But I've been so excited to talk to you specifically some more about this topic, Conscious Edge, and, everything about it. So I'm really excited to have you on today. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Of course, this is definitely, as people are going to find out, this is definitely right on point with why I do what I do. So I cannot wait to share.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So I want to start with actually talking about you. So tell me some more about your background, where you were born, grew up, what you studied in school, where you went, all those things, just how you started out.
So I actually am from originally Cleveland, Ohio. I still live in Ohio in Columbus. And I went to Ohio State and went into the medical field. And I figured out very quickly on, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My mom was a appraiser and a realtor before that, owned an appraisal company. So I really have grown up around real estate. And so, and business owners as well. My stepdad and my dad were both business owners as well. So going into the medical field, I very quickly figured out I did not fit in because I didn't like to be told when to show up, when to leave. And I didn't like somebody else controlling my schedule. So I went to my mom and I was like, hey, Mom, I think you're right. I want to check out this real estate stuff you do. So at the time, she was training real estate seminars. She had become a real estate investor, was very successful at it. I literally remember being 17 years old, standing on the top of a ladder, putting signs up on telephone poles that say, "We buy houses." And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be like her. I wanted to pay my own way. So I go to her at like 22, 23 years of age. And I'm like, Mom, I think you're right. I kind of want to check out the real estate stuff. And ended up going into real estate with her and doing well and getting into mobile homes was kind of my little niche and my passion and the thing that really excited me. And then fast forward to today, I do something very different than real estate, but very related to real estate with the mindset work that I do, which we can get into. But that's kind of my life in a nutshell.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like, it's interesting. I find that a lot of our guests actually have started in different fields and decided to shift gears probably around the same time as you, around their 20s. So I think that that's really interesting. And for young investors specifically, I feel like the millennial mindset is kind of almost criticized for not knowing what to do or not necessarily having like a specific idea of what they want to do. So I don't know. I think it's always comforting to hear that these people who are very successful and have found their niche and things like that are, they also had that little bit of, I don't want to say existential crises, but those things that definitely were kind of shocks for them. So I want to talk a little bit more about, what you do specifically, because I know, I was confused definitely by the type of coaching that you do before we got a chance to meet. And I'm sure like myself, some people are hearing, your description and things like that and have this misconception that you're quote unquote a life coach. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that based on what we talked about. So do you care to share some more about the differences between, life coaching and your specific kind of coaching, how they connect, how they're first of all,
I really appreciate the opportunity to clarify, because there's so much especially in the real estate investment world, there's so much education and coaches and mentors and what's the difference and is this life coaching? So I really appreciate the opportunity to clarify. So first, there are a lot of different type of coaches, and I think everybody should have coaches for different parts of their life. If you're struggling in a personal area of your life or you need accountability, a lot of times life coaching is more on the mindset or along the lines of accountability. Like you have a goal, something you want to achieve in your life. You want somebody to help point out kind of maybe where you might have some blind spots. That would be kind of more of a generalized coach. Whereas the kind of coaching that I do, and I call it a profit acceleration coach, because I really specifically work, number one, with entrepreneurs. And I was really fortunate. You mentioned just a few minutes ago that sometimes millennials get criticized for not quite having it all figured out. And there's an old way of thinking. I mean, how could at 16, 18, 20 years old, you're expected to pick what you want to do for the rest of your life? And you have
exactly.
You don't even have you don't even know what's available to you.
Right. I barely understood geometry, let alone what I wanted to do with my life,
And even for me, which as my story unfolds, you'll find out I got criticized because I decided in my mid-30s to leave what looked really good on paper and go into something completely different. So what I do now is I really work with entrepreneurs around what is stopping them from getting to that next level in their business. Business honestly comes down to, or building your business really comes down to three things. You need customers, lead sources. You need to make offers, whether that's making offers on properties, or if you're in another type of field, you're making offers to clients. And third is follow-up. If you do those three things, you'll be successful. But what I find is a majority of entrepreneurs get stuck in one of those three places, either because of an old belief system about what will people think of me, who am I to think that I can do this, I don't know enough. There's all these things that we tell ourselves, and they really come from old programming, something you experienced in your early years that created a belief system that says you're not good enough, that you're not going to be successful, and you hold yourself back and you hide. A lot of times people will get really, really busy in setting up the perfect website or making sure they have the right name for their company or the business card. These things that feel like they're going to make or break you, but they really don't matter. They evolve. Even you, as you've built your company, the things that you do in your company when you first started versus now, it evolves. And so what I do is I work with people to reformulate, rewire the self-protective parts of your brain that keep you playing small so that you can go to that next level.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I'm just thinking about something that you had said even earlier, you don't know what you want to do at 18. And I think about who I am at 25 and how different I am from when I was 18. And I have a theater background. So I was surrounded by people who I think had those in a completely different sphere of the world, not necessarily, actors are entrepreneurs in their own way, I guess you could say, but just experiencing those blockages and things like that. I know I personally put up my own walls and had to overcome my own personal blockages and things like that. It just, I think it's very interesting, how you've been able to bring that over into the investment sphere, because I personally think it's just something that people take for granted and don't always put first, don't put themselves or their happiness or being kind to themselves first. So, I think this is all really awesome, Alecia.
Well, what I discovered, so I trained real estate strategy for 15 years. My mom was a trainer. And then as I joined the company, and then we started to actually train other investors, people look for a strategy. They look for the thing that's going to unlock them. And then all of a sudden the cash flow is going to come in and it's all going to make sense. And what happens is probably 90% of the people who get education on strategy will always get this feeling like, I don't have enough. I'm not ready yet. And so they never do anything with the training. And what really broke my heart, I didn't train for my own company. I trained for another company. And what really bothered me and kept me up at night was really that people were spending tens of thousands of dollars on real estate training to learn to invest. And then because they didn't learn who to become and how to think to get over those pieces, they were going back to 9-to-5s with credit card debt that was like taxing for them.
Wow.
And when I discovered the work that I do, I knew that that was the missing piece. Like, my feeling is you can always figure out the strategy. I know your listeners, you are as humans are just intelligent with the ability to figure it out if you can get your mind right.
Right.
And so your wealth and your ability to grow your business will only go as far as your mind will let it. So the most important thing you can invest in, the most valuable thing you can invest in, is getting control of your mind so that your emotions are not controlling what you're doing. Because even if it feels like you can justify, it can sound like I've got it, and you can justify why you're playing small, and you can say it's because I have a family, or it's because of this, or I don't have enough money in order to invest. You can have all of those things limit you, or you can take control of your mind, and then the possibilities become limitless.
I love that. And I just finished up working with a friend of mine that's actually focusing on this type of work, but for actors. So I was part of her trial group. And that's one of the things. It's that justification for yourself, that it's a core signal. It's a core behavior that is saying, it's feeding into the idea that I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, and this and that. And I think that's, if someone can, exactly like you said, if someone can wrap their mind around it, control their mindset on things like that, I think it unlocks so much. So I want to talk about, the conscious edge and, what the conscious edge does and what its goals are. I think you touched on a lot of it, but to put it in context of what, your business specifically does, Alecia, what do you guys do and who's a typical client? Just tell me some more about conscious edge.
So primarily we work with female, not that I'm opposed to working with men, but I just have a soft spot for rising female entrepreneurs. And, it's something. Let me kind of get to the point on that. What we do at the Conscious Edge is it's really about bringing awareness to the unconscious blocks, to the things that you believe that are running in the background that cause you to behave in a different way than you want to, that are not in alignment with what you consciously want. So when we bring that pathway forward, and I use a process called immunity to change, which is not my method, but it's a very, very powerful method I can tell you a little bit more about.
Oh, definitely.
And we use that as a gateway into the unconscious mind to find out what's really there. And it's fascinating because people think they know what's there. And then what they find is, like, a really great example was there was a woman who she'd hit about 300,000 in her business, and she could not get past that 300,000 mark. She had, a great house. She could support herself. her husband worked, but if, something happened, they were very secure, even with just her income. And so she was really struggling to do some hires because she was telling herself she didn't want to deal with having to manage people. But what we actually discovered is that because she had a belief that if you take more than what you need, you're selfish and entitled.
Mm-hmm.
She actually wasn't setting bigger goals for herself because she didn't want to be selfish and entitled.
Wow. Yeah.
And she thought it was something completely different. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting, the things that are planted in us as children and they're not even, it's not like intentional. It's not like your parents or some government agencies implanting these mindset things
Right.
into you. It's your perspective of how you perceived the world when you were younger.
Yeah.
What you took away from a situation, and you created some belief around that.
Wow. I really like the way that you phrase that. It's like, it's your perception of how you've perceived the world. I think that I don't want to come off as sounding like I'm ignorant toward anybody's mindset or anything like that. But, I think, I know for me personally, I'm quick to blame, oh, well, because I'm a woman, this and that happens. And I'm quick to not blame society or blame history, you know what I mean? But it's how I've perceived my place in the world or in the workplace or here in the, or in the theater industry. So I think that I love the way that you phrase that. And I think that I can clearly see, the type of work that these female entrepreneurs are able to do for themselves. It seems like it's able to unlock a ton. So you mentioned immunity to change coaching. So what exactly is immunity to change, and how was that concept developed to be used for Conscious Edge clients?
So immunity to change is a coaching methodology that's developed by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. These were two Harvard professors that really have put their life's work into how the mind works and how our unconscious thoughts drive how we feel, which leads to certain behaviors that oftentimes get in the way of your big goals. So for me, the way, just a personal example of how this would show up. So for me, I found after I had children, it was really challenging for me to balance work and being a mom. And what I discovered is in the background, there was some belief systems about how a mom needs to show up for her children. And so what I would do is I would readily drop work and run at the drop of a hat to help my child with something that my husband could do. But I felt such immense guilt if I didn't get up and do it. So it set me back in my business until I could get to the bottom of it and start to work at that. So what's really cool about immunity to change is that there's an opportunity to create new learning for your brain. So just like that belief system that made me feel guilty, that was developed from my learning of the way that the world works. And now I'm able to use the same process to go through and look at, okay, I'm stuck here. What's in the way? And then how do I create new learning for my brain? How do I change what I believe and when is it true and when is it not true? Because the thing about the unconscious mind, and this is what their work reveals, is that it's really self-protective. It's there as a primal instinct to keep you from harm. And so what our brain perceived as harm before or as bad before may not serve us right now in that moment in our life now that circumstances have changed. It doesn't care. It just says, hey, this feels unsafe. We're not going to keep going down this path. And so it can look like you're abandoning work because you have to go wash the dishes, but it serves something. Each of your behaviors, each of those things, it serves something to keep you safe. And so it allows that window into the unconscious mind so that you can choose consciously to act different. That's why I call it my company, The Conscious Edge, is because this is about you having the ability to choose differently from a different perspective.
Yeah. So it sounds like, based on what, the unconscious the work that the unconscious does to protect and to really put up those red alerts, those red flags, even, years down the line, if something happened, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, something that happened as a child could stop me from wanting to do something that seems to have no connection later on in life. But I'm saying, oh, no, this doesn't seem right because XYZ happened to you 10 years ago. And now, you're not doing it now. And therefore I hold myself back from certain things. So I'm just wondering, how long does it take some of these practices to, and I know that everyone's different, but generally, how long does it take some of these practices to really stick for people? Because I found that even, after I was in a test group for my friend, I still find myself getting stressed out by the same things I spent 6 weeks actively working to undo. But full disclosure, I don't think I really kept up with it after the 6 weeks. And I should have probably kept up with it a little bit more consistently. But I think like that for me, it was like, oh, well, I did 6 weeks of this. I should be good. But it obviously is a life practice and not just a 6-week trial period.
I would have to say probably one of the most common things that's said in one of my workshops, our initial workshop that we do, is, I thought I already handled this. I don't understand why this is coming back. And people will try to do different versions of the map, because that's the really cool thing about immunity to change is you're learning a system that can be used over and over again. And they'll try to do a different map, and yet it comes back to the same thing. And they're like, I'm like, it's really there. It's really the same thing. So it does require maintenance. The first thing I would say is lasting change typically takes 4 to 6 months of consistently challenging an old belief system. I call them big assumptions. In immunity to change, we call them big assumptions. It's the assumption you make about the way the world works. Mm-hmm. And so 4 to 6 months, a lot of times clients will take, a year of working on it before it really feels like they've got a real grasp on it. The intention is really to set someone up, though, to be able to independently catch themselves and work through that. And every time you get hooked in. The other piece is, doesn't matter how much work you do, you will still get hooked in. The thing about it is catching yourself when you get hooked in. So the more you practice, it's like anything else, the more you practice at it, the faster you can catch yourself. You'll recognize it in your body. You'll have certain tells that you'll become aware of, and you'll catch yourself faster and faster. What might have taken you, what might have put you out of the game for a month, now it's maybe a week, and then eventually it's a few days, and then maybe it's a few hours, and then it's a couple minutes, and then it's 30 seconds. So it takes time but you will still get hooked in. I'll never forget my poor husband. We've been together for 17 years now, but I had got out of a really rough relationship, and I love to cook, and I would always want to make this one thing, steak salad. I would want to make this beautiful mixed green salad with that in that relationship. And I would say I'm going to make steak and we're going to slice it up. So I said something to my husband. We're in the grocery store. He wasn't my husband at the time. We were just dating. And I said, I think I'm going to make steak salad tonight. He goes, can I just have my steak on the side? Which is exactly what that old relationship, what he used to say. Can I just have my steak on the side?
Oh.
And I flipped out in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And he's like, what just happened? So I'm sure anybody could relate. You have something where another person says those words and it triggers you. So we laugh about it now, and it's always a funny story that I share, but that's how what triggers look like, is that it's not even the same situation. It's not the same person. And yet you have the same emotional reaction to it. And that happens in business too.
Right. Yeah. And that brings me to my next question. It's interesting that you bring this up, because I'm wondering, in your experience, what are some of the common unconscious blocks that you see for investors that they put up, whether it's in, I think you mentioned very early on, one of the key pillars to, what you're instilling in entrepreneurs is the ability to follow up and to make somewhat, I heard, you had said something and it struck in me, the word negotiations, and overcoming that fear of hearing the word no and rejection. And all of these things started coming up for me when you were describing, what Conscious Edge does. So I'm curious, in terms of an investor's point of view, what are some of those unconscious blocks that you've seen them put up, and how have you seen people overcome these?
For women specifically, it's interesting how the self-worth piece comes up a lot, and it comes up in a lot of weird ways in business.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, I was even just talking to a close friend of mine the other day, and we were saying, she says, I'm really bad about following up to make the offer. If I would just make the offer, I'd be fine. But what I find is and this is kind of some of the awareness building that we do at the Conscious Edge and with the immunity to change, is we look at when are you triggered, what specific circumstances are you triggered in, and what specific circumstances are you not triggered in. And so for her, it was the better the conversation was with a seller, like the more connection that was built with the seller, the harder it was to make the offer. Because we as investors, right, we have to make low offers typically in order for something to cash flow appropriately, or for us to be able to recognize the upside potential on a property. And so it was like the more connection she had with people, the harder it was for her to make the offer. And it really came down to, a lot of times we worry about being liked. Like we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to, we want to be liked. There's a lot of, and I don't mean this to offend anyone, but a lot of it is centered around helping ourselves, like protecting ourselves. We don't want to find out maybe that we're not smart, or, we don't want to be rejected. And it really comes back to a lot of those same things.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you shift and you think about what are the needs of the other person, and you come from that place and you really look for how does this help them, it's a little bit easier. Like when you're asking me, how do you overcome that? It's really about stop thinking about yourself and think about what the other person needs. And I found that we as women are natural caretakers. I mean, here's the thing, women are so powerful. And I wanted to mention something that you had asked me, or you were talking about earlier.
Sure.
About perspective and how it's our own perspective that creates these belief systems. I don't want to discredit the fact that there certainly is systemic things that cause and lead to some of our beliefs, like the way that maybe we saw a parent talk to a father talk to a mother, or the way someone has treated someone else. That certainly does those things are real. But the other piece is, as our society changes, as women have more and more rights and more equality, and races have more equality, what happens is, if the mind doesn't catch up to that, then it still stays locked up in your mind. So it's so important that not only does the work come from outside of our society, like the whole system changes, but that you also do the personal work so that your mind gets up to speed, and even beyond that. That's where the change is really going to be permanent, is when each person's mind is upgraded to new standards and new ways of being. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that piece because it's both.
Right. In a lot of ways, it feels like, the world, it's a lot like we adapt so quickly to new technology, and why we don't adapt as quickly to the new world and our new surroundings. I'm sure people do. I know everybody's, again, to emphasize, everybody's different, but I'm quicker to accept an iOS update on my iPhone than I think I am to accept change in a relationship in my life. You know what I mean? So I think that's
technology definitely moves faster. Technology is definitely upgrading faster. It doesn't have to be that way. But I mean, I was just watching Social Dilemma, wow, that's a scary movie.
Yeah.
But the truth is, technology is changing so much faster than our brain is upgrading, because we're dealing on hundreds of thousands of years of instinct. And so that's why
Mm-hmm.
the work is so important. It wouldn't matter how many strategies you get, wouldn't matter how many of those things that you get. It's really, you have to do the dig deep, the work. You have to dig deep to do the work. I don't know why that wouldn't come out of my mouth. But
That's
you
all
were
right. I
asking,
definitely
like,
feel
what
like
are the
I have a million thoughts swimming around in my head through
right,
this whole conversation. So I get you.
right, right. So your original question was, what are some of the common things? A lot of it really comes back to self-worth, recognizing that you matter, that your way of doing things in business, that you do offer something special. You're not going to click with everyone. Not everyone is going to like you. There are going to be people who are offended by the low offer, although most of the time I find they're not. That's one of the things we were talking about was the more connection you build with someone, the more likely they are to do business with you, and the less likely they're to be offended by you. So you make the offer, they go, no, that's a little bit lower than I want. And then it's over. But we build it up in our minds to be like, it's going to mean something about us. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting way of putting it. Yeah, that's really interesting. And how have you seen, this training, if you have more to piggyback off of, this question, but also how have you seen the training impact, the way your clients have functioned in the real estate industry? I know you've touched on some of them, but are there any specific examples? You're providing some really awesome examples, but are there any specific examples that come to mind in the way you've seen, the full practice kind of execute itself specifically in real estate?
Oh gosh, it. All right, let me think here.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, here's the thing. Number one, the reason that I do this work. So I want to be clear. I don't do real estate as my main piece anymore, and
Mhm.
it was really allowing myself the permission to do what I was really called to do. When I was in my 20s and I could make the kind of money that I make in real estate, I was like, yeah, sign me up. But it's not necessarily my calling piece. So what I would say is a big piece of it is moving from being afraid to make offers, realizing that making offers, you're in service to others, or following up with someone, we don't want to bother people. And part of the reason I'm keeping this a little bit more general is because some of the nature of the work is so deep. Like I would not want to betray anybody's specific, thing that they've gone through. Or,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
but what's interesting, so you're saying like specific to real estate, what's interesting is that this thing that holds each person back, it affects all the areas of their life.
Right.
So as it's like, if you're having trouble following up with people because you don't want to bother them, because you feel like if you keep following up with someone that you're bothering them.
I know you're speaking in the general you, but I'm like, oh, I do that.
So, well, and I don't, yes, I am speaking the general you, but also in connection to there's somebody this lands with. And so if you feel like you don't want to bother people, that you're doing in other parts of your life too. There's
Right.
parts where your friendships are suffering because maybe it looks like you don't want to bother your friend for some help you need. And your friend might be looking at it from, gosh, you never, like, you're denying your friend the opportunity to help. And because how good does it feel when you help someone else?
Oh yeah. It feels awesome.
Right. And so when we're like, no, that's okay, I don't need your help, your friend's like, all right, well, like, you're denying that opportunity for the friend to feel, better about themselves. So again, it's like shifting this perspective. So, people go from not being able to follow up to really understanding the value in them following up, and a seller saying things like, oh gosh, thank you so much. I've been so busy and I'm so overwhelmed with, cleaning out my mom's house. I've been meaning to call you and I totally just keep running out of time. When I think about it, it's 10 o'clock at night. So it's really about how we show up differently in our lives, in our business. It's that awareness that people gain in finding that, you do matter, like I said. And it comes out in a lot of different ways for people. The real estate specific piece is not like, for whatever reason, I'm not getting something that's like aha shining through.
That's totally fine. No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head that this is kind of an all-encompassing thing. It doesn't necessarily relate to how you're functioning in business, but it relates to just about how you're functioning just about everywhere else. So I think that really underscores the question, and that, it goes so far beyond what you're doing in business. So
It is.
I think you answered that perfectly.
It really, like, one of my mentors says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And
Right.
people will go, I don't agree that one. Like, I promise you it's showing up in other places. So if you're the person who's not even reaching out, if you're listening to this and you're not even reaching out to make offers on properties, like you're not even going out beyond a realtor to find deals, to contact sellers directly to see if they want to sell, my question is, where else are you hiding in your life?
Right. I think that that's such a great way of putting it. And I love the way that you had phrased it earlier too, is that, like, take some of this, every bit of collateral from every decision you're ever going to make falls all on you, and put it on the other person in a way that's like you're serving the other person too in what you do. So I think that it's a great way to look at investing, and to look at, yourself as an investor and all of the people, because you work, especially in the real estate industry, but you're going to work with a lot of different people. Which brings me to one of my questions too, is, we deal with people who will self-direct all of their investments. These are our clients. They make the call, we facilitate the transaction. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if you've experienced working with anybody that self-directs their investments, but how do you think mindset plays into self-direction in a way that's, either different, or if it's very, very similar to if someone's purchasing a property outside of their IRA? I'm just curious how you think, self-direction plays into, self-directing your mindset.
Yeah. No, first of all, I think it's awesome. I think being an entrepreneur is just the most amazing thing, because there's so much empowerment in it.
I agree.
And part of the mindset is, like, we're not really taught in schools. And I say this, I even feel like a pang. I just like, and here's a real moment for you all. When you're out there speaking your mind, and you have to give publicly what you truly believe, that can feel very risky. So, like, as I'm about to say this, I'm feeling a pang, like, oh gosh, I know I'm going to offend somebody, and I really don't mean to, but schools are really don't lend in general towards entrepreneurship. There's one right answer. There's a lot of, you have to work independently. It's very not how we work as entrepreneurs, right? We work together. We have many right ways of doing things. And so it's so empowering to me to think of the idea of even self-directing your IRA and being able to choose what you invest in. But the big thing I think I see come up is, you always think that you have more time to plan for retirement, to plan for the future. And so it takes some real vision of what you want your life to look like in the future, and discipline to not take the immediate gratification and then put it into some sort of retirement account, and put the profits on something into a retirement account. Whereas I see a lot of investors, like, they build their business outside of having that retirement account, and then they have to keep working and keep working and keep working and keep working. There really should be an end game here. There should be a vision of what you want to create, and then a discipline to say, I'm going to recognize that profit later in my life. Whereas with traditional investing and having a job, a lot of that is done for you. And so it takes this confidence that you have to develop. And I want to mention on confidence, you don't become confident and then go do your business. You become confident by doing it. You become confident by making a mistake, learning, and getting better at it. So confidence comes with doing.
Yeah, I love that.
So it really takes the fact that there's a big piece of mindset here, in that you probably weren't necessarily brought up that you were able to be in control of your future, like your far down future, end of like retirement future. And so you have to, like, know that You are smart enough to figure it out. You have people who are there to guide you. And there's also a trust in yourself that you know what you're doing. And so it's even more important that your mindset be right and strong, because you haven't been raised likely with that mindset of you are in control of your financial future.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really great way to put it. I know even before I started working at CamaPlan, the idea was always both my parents, my mom specifically has been working, toward retirement. And just because that's what I had grown up with, that's, what I thought it always had to be. And that sense of, you don't really control how you function in the working world or capitalism, whatever you want to call it. But that kind of came up for me too. So to work with people who are in the driver's seat, I think it is definitely a very empowering thing. But like you said, it does require a certain level of discipline and confidence. So to touch on what you had said about confidence, I'm curious about, you've mentioned that, you're not necessarily investing anymore. You've kind of shifted over.
Mm-hmm.
So from when you were originally an investor, though, in your 20s, do you have any specific instances or things like that have built your confidence, or examples of, greatest failures or success stories that really that stick out to you? Not failures in like a way that it's, this was a complete and total failure, because I definitely agree with you. Doing is just enough of a success in itself, that even if it it ends up as a quote unquote failure, I think that you're still learning something from it. So nothing is ever truly a complete and total failure.
But that's why I'm laughing. Because failure, people hear failure. And by the way, that's one of the main things that comes up when we're mapping someone's mindset out and really getting to the core of what's holding them back. Failure is a really big thing that comes up.
Oh, I bet.
For a lot of people. I can't tell you how many times I see the word failure come up. And what's so funny is I've failed so much. I have failed probably if you're an entrepreneur, fail as much as you can. In fact, I noticed my daughter was starting to have some anxiety. She's in first grade. She's having anxiety over doing some math problems because she was afraid that she wasn't going to do it good enough or wasn't going to do it right. Oh. I was like, every time you try and fail and get it wrong, I'm giving you a Skittle, because it's so important to have a healthy relationship with failure. Because when you fail at something, it does not make you a failure. It's just you learn, you gain so much. In fact, you probably in your life, if you think about it, you probably learned more every time you failed than you did when you succeeded.
100%.
You didn't learn as much. You got that. You got that in the bag. Your greatest learning, you become more masterful, you become better through failure. And I don't know why, somewhere along the lines, maybe we've always been this way as a human race, that making a mistake is bad. And yet it is so necessary. Everything we have in this world that is an advancement, cars, planes, light bulbs, is a result of multiple attempts and failures.
Oh, definitely. I think that's such a good way of putting it. I think, if everybody were always successful all the time, we'd only be met with immediate gratification. And I don't think anybody would ever learn anything. So I totally agree with you on all of that, Alecia.
Let me tell you, asked me about one of my failures.
Oh, yeah. If there's a specific story that sticks out to you, especially, from being an investor, and how did that, and I'm sure because everything is, the point that I'm getting with a lot of the stuff that you uncover for your conscious edge entrepreneurs is the idea that, it's all kind of connected in a way. So how did that mistake, either play into you building the conscious edge? How did you overcome it? I'm just curious of, how you overcame this and what lesson it taught you.
So probably investor specific, biggest failure was trying to do things myself. Mm-hmm. And what I found and I can remember it was my second mobile home deal. The first mobile home deal was a total failure. Free doesn't mean free, let me tell you. And I'm happy to share that too. But But I would say the number one thing that probably really plagues active investors is the do-it-myself mentality. There isn't enough of you to go around. And that was one of the things I didn't like about real estate is I felt like there was a grind to real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because of the way I was doing it. And I remember one specific mobile home deal where I literally, you guys, I had goggles. There's a picture of me with goggles and a mask on, and I am literally spray painting the inside of this mobile home myself. And that mobile home ended up taking I want to say, and it should have never taken this long, but I think it was 9 months of rehab.
Wow.
Because it was because I was doing everything myself.
Right.
And ultimately what ended up happening was I got fed up. I found the right contractor, I hired, and we were up and rented in like a month. So, it's like, you think you can't afford it. You think you can't find the right person. Keep the contractor that isn't right for you for too long. Like step up and be the leader in your business. Don't be the worker in your business. Because it's costing so much time. You think you don't have the money to pay for it, but it is costing you so much time. You're paying for it anyways.
Right.
And you have the headache of doing it yourself.
Yeah, I think that you're really hitting the nail on the head with a lot of things, especially the idea of time economy and just how much that plays into not only, your investment, but your mindset as an investor too.
Yeah. So I did not like the grind of real estate. I like the paper investing. One of the things I liked about mobile homes, and I still have some notes that I collect on, was to rehab mobile homes, sell them on notes. So I would help people to be able to achieve home ownership without having the rental type responsibility. So I was actually taking people who didn't think they'd ever really amount to anything. And this is one of the things I want to point out. In your life, if you're in a career right now, and I'm speaking to your listeners, if you're in a career right now and you really want to get into real estate and people around you maybe think you're crazy or like, what are you doing? Like, you have a great job. I've been there and I've had to shift careers a couple different times to really hit on what landed for me. But there's a theme in your life. There's something that you've always gravitated towards in everything that you've ever done that is what I would call your calling. And so when I was in the medical field, I was always drawn to being a clinical instructor. When I was in real estate, I was really, really passionate about teaching investors how to take control of their lives and make their own money, and B, helping my mobile home owners achieve home ownership. People who didn't think they would amount to much oftentimes would be so proud that they actually owned a home and they were paying for it and it was theirs. And then in the work that I do now, it's always been about up-leveling people. It's always been about allowing people to see themselves in a greater capacity than they are right now. And so you have a thing. You have something that you always gravitate toward in whatever you're doing. And that becomes really what your ultimate calling is, no matter what field you end up in.
Right.
So as you're entering into investing, as you're growing your investment career, as you're finding your niche, that's the cool thing about real estate is you could do a million different things. Look at what is it that lights you up about it. Is it the numbers? Is it how, like my mom, she's not about that's not her thing. The people thing isn't her thing. She loves the deal. She loves to negotiate. She's an amazing wholesaler. She gets the best deals in the Cleveland market, of anybody I know. Because when she gets the deal, she's so lit up. So whatever it is that you do, there's something that lights you up. Build that into your business, and it'll just fuel you.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, thank you so much for being so candid, honestly, about, I've got a whole list of them. Here you go. But Thanks for sharing. I mean, I think this is kind of in a way, I know for me, just sitting here listening, it feels like chicken soup for the soul talking to you on a Tuesday morning, but it's, I think that a lot of listeners are going to take a ton away from what you've just said on top of, just this entire episode. I do want to touch, you mentioned your mom. So in addition to being a passionate trainer, you treasure your life. I got to read some of your blog when I was, getting ready for this episode. You treasure your life as a wife and a mother as well. And I've gotten bits and pieces of that in this interview, Alecia. But how do you find balance even now in those two lives? And where do you see the benefits overlapping in your home life and your work life and everything like that? And because I know it's been, you're talking so candidly and so honestly about, your journey, and how do you still see it playing out now?
Well, okay, let me just say, I'm still figuring it out too.
Yeah.
And we all are. If you ever meet someone who says they've got it all figured out, I got to be honest, run far away, because that is a person who's really not looking inward. There's always 100% another layer. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons I went into this business is not only because of being a real estate trainer and seeing so many people not implement, and really wanted to make sure more people were implementing the strategies they learned. The other piece is that when I had my daughter, I didn't want to be dragging I wanted to be with my child, and I didn't want to be dragging her into flea infested, dilapidated properties.
Yeah.
And I could have got childcare for that 100%. And we do have, I'm very fortunate. My husband is a firefighter, so we have a really nice schedule that helps us to be more present for our children. Mm-hmm. But and a lot of people go into real estate because they do want to have that flexibility to be with their families. But you can't do it all the time, all by yourself. You cannot be all things at all times at the same time. So I find that it's important for me to have wins, that things that I'm focused on in my business and accomplishing. Like today, recording this podcast is one of my main focuses, along with about 2 or 3 other things. Mm-hmm. And if those get accomplished, today was a win. And then I get to be present with my child, because I'm kind of a workaholic. I could think about work all the time because I love it. Uh-huh. But I also want to be present with my child. So I do have to work at managing my mind, being aware of when I've drifted off into some idea of something that I could do that would really change people's lives. I have to be like, wait, we're playing with magnetiles right now. So, you have to be aware of that piece and know that it's all as it should be. You're not less than because, you only did 3 things in a day. And, at the end of the day, for me, people are what matter. Being there for my people. That's my clients, that's my children. And that's enough. And sometimes I think there's this feeling oh, I'm not enough. I didn't make enough money. I didn't make enough this. That pressure you put on yourself is taxing. And I've put that pressure on myself, and I never feel good about it. So it's really about focusing on the wins, focusing on what's working, and just working to get better at the things that maybe are not working as well. Not that they're wrong, just working on it. That's why I failure, fail, screw it up, whatever. You get better.
Well, awesome. I mean, I think that is such a wonderful way of looking at things, especially because, and I'm sure you've met a lot of entrepreneurs like this. I'm sure, your own information about, how you've perceived the world even before having kids, the idea of, oh, well, women can't have it all. I think that's absolute nonsense. And I like the idea that you also said you like what you do, you like working, and you're able to still dedicate time to your family, ample time to your family, but you still like what you do. I think the idea that you have to make sacrifices and work a job that's going to get you money, but you don't necessarily love it in order to spend more time with your family. I think a lot of that stuff can get broken down, whether it's, in immunity to change practice, or even just understanding that, exactly like you said, crossing giving yourself a couple major things to do a day, and taking the win instead of adding more pressure to yourself. Because I think there's also the belief that you need to be doing 500 things at once or else you're not busy enough. I know that was something that was just like a pretty, I hate to use the word toxic, but definitely not the healthiest way that I saw a lot of people behave in college. And it definitely informed a lot of the ways that I worked the first couple of years after I graduated. And I mean, I think just the stuff that you're saying is very wonderful. And the idea that, you're still going to you're going to be figuring it out years from now is reassuring, but also so helpful for people to hear.
Well, and if I could just say, and when I say I'm still working on it, like you will always work on it. And the piece, like even for me, there's been some inner work, some leadership training that I have been wanting to do for about 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I've been holding off on it because I just felt I couldn't take the time away from my family. I couldn't take the time away from my children, and really struggled with it. And what I realized is that you're going to get to a point in your business where you get some, I don't want to say stuck, but it is almost like a plateau. And it feels like I can't access that next level. And so what I noticed just recently, like just this month, is I've hit that plateau. Mm-hmm. And I've always said I would never ask my clients to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. And so I really had to dig deep to say, okay, how does this look for me to really get to this next level, do this training that I've been putting off for 3.5 years, and get my mind around it and take the dive into that. So even I still continue. You should always be continuing as you want to go to another level. And it's really about showing up better for my family, because what I saw is I was starting to pull back. I was starting to say, you know what, I shouldn't do more. I should be there for my family. We're in a pandemic.
Right.
It's weird, I just need to be there. But it's that either or conversation you were just talking about. You have to do this or this. It's how do I show up differently? How do I expand what's available to me? And that really comes from inner work. So
Absolutely.
even for me, like I just want everybody to know, like even your mentors and coaches, they have mentors and coaches, and they have people who help them go to the next level. And if you have a mentor or coach, one of my biggest pet peeves is like, don't hire a coach who isn't making more money than you. If your coach is excellent at something that you're not good at, who cares how much money they make as long as they know how to bring out the best in you?
Right.
Sports coaches, they are not necessarily the best players in the league when they're the best at bringing out the talent that's on the field. So it's the same for all the coaches. What I would say is, don't worry about how much money your coach makes. Worry about whether or not they're continuing to invest in their own personal development.
Yeah, I think that that's an excellent way of putting it, Alecia. And thank you for honestly all of these major takeaways that I think I know I will take away from this conversation. I think a lot of our listeners will definitely lean in to a lot of the things that you've been saying and hopefully start to take that look inside themselves for sure. So we're starting to wind down on, this conversation. So I want to touch on, one question that we ask a lot of, or all of our guests that come on, is what would you say your keys to building wealth and unlocking your financial freedom is? And, this does not have to be financial in any way, but for you, what is something that has informed the way you look at, and it's another loaded word like failure, but success?
So I don't think we put enough value on having gratitude and being happy. Mm-hmm. Your success can look like whatever you want. But I know that the more that we make a difference for other people, I think that is the biggest thing. Like, are you helping others? Are you helping your family? Are you helping clients? Are you helping distressed homeowners? The more you help others, that definitely, like, there's studies that show that doing for others is really what brings more happiness. So, I mean, that for me is like, that's success in and of itself. But you also have to have money to be able to take care of yourself. And a majority of that is really about your mind and being able to transform the way you perceive the world, the way you show up in your world. So, I mean, that's pretty much what this whole thing was about.
Exactly.
But, that's the key. It's not a strategy. It's not how smart you are. It's not where you went to school. It's not what your grades were. It's who you're being. And that comes from the inner work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for, making me feel like I was being seen and heard, and for being so open and honest, and for making me very hungry for a steak salad. Thank you so much for being here today, Alecia. I seriously think our listeners are going to be able to take so much away from this episode. But the final question that we have before we sign off is, how can people reach you? If they have more questions about Conscious Edge or want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to reach out to you right now?
So I would recommend that you email me directly, which I hope that you'll put my email address in for people, because my name's spelled a little bit funky. My grandmother still, to this day, I imagine, is up in heaven, like annoyed that my name is spelled Alecia at AleciaSt.Germain.com. Email me directly. And part of the reason is I don't want you to end up lost in some sort of emails, filter or on some subscriber list. If you're really interested in getting over some of the blocks that may be keeping you from getting to the next level in your business, I want to invite you to email me directly, and make sure in the subject line you put CamaPlan podcast, so that it jumps out at me and I know that this is where you're reaching out to me from.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And, we definitely want to continue working with you, Alecia. So everybody listening, please be on the lookout for any upcoming events that we have with Alecia, either at CamaPlan or, just anywhere out there. Be on the lookout for it. If you have more questions for us, please be sure to reach out as well. Until then, thank you all for joining us and listening this week on the Road to Financial Freedom. Be sure to tune in next week to hear more from our experts who have paved their roads to financial freedom. Or you can call us today to learn more about how you can start to take control of your future wealth. Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning into our podcast. We truly hope that you're enjoying your ride along the road to financial freedom so far. If you like what you've heard and learned, or if you want to hear more about certain topics that we may have already covered or have yet to cover, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear any feedback from you so that we may continue to make our podcast the best that it can be for you, our listeners. Thanks again, everyone. And remember, tune in next week to the Road to Financial Freedom.